الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم إلى آخر الآية صدق الله العظيم. We begin in Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him. And we pray to Him and beseech Him for His guidance and for His protection. And we need His protection more today than ever before. For His guidance and for His protection and for His blessings. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers. On our father Adam alayhi salam, and our father Ibrahim alayhi salam, on Musa alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam, and on his mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary alayhi salam, and on the last of all the prophets of Allah, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. O you who possess faith, obey Allah. Supreme authority therefore belongs to Allah. Supreme loyalty therefore must be to Allah. The supreme law therefore must be Allah's law. Obey Allah. And obey the Prophet, the Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. After Allah's authority, supreme authority therefore resides in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. After Allah's law, supreme law is the law of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and obey those in authority minkum. Obey those in authority from within the Muslim community. This ayah of the Quran of Surah An-Nisa and other ayat such as those in Surah Al-Ma'idah, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Whosoever judges by law other than Allah's law, whosoever's law seeks to be supreme over Allah's law, such a people are wicked, sinful, and a people who disbelieve in Allah. Arising out of these verses of the Quran, there emerged the institution known in Islam as the Caliphate. And today, we explain that institution, the Caliphate. What was its purpose? How did it function? When was it destroyed? Why was it destroyed? How was it destroyed? How did the world of Islam respond to the destruction of the Khilafah? What was it which replaced the Khilafah? And what is the destiny of the Khilafah? As we address the subject, Imam Mahdi and the return of the Khilafah. You're not going to get this subject taught by Oxford University. They're not going to teach this subject. You're not even going to get governments to teach this subject. But you get those who follow the Quran and who follow a man named Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. They are a people who will show interest in this subject. The Khilafah is a part of Islam. It was established by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. He was Khalifatullah, and he established a system of state and government which, number one, recognized Allah's sovereignty. Number two, recognize Allah's authority as the supreme authority. Number three, recognize Allah's law as the highest law. And if Allah made something haram, then the Khilafah ensured that it remained haram. It was enforced as haram. And if Allah made something halal, then the Khilafah ensured that it remained as halal. And therefore, the state and government in the system of Khilafah represented submission to Allah, and therefore collective Islam. Submission to Allah. The Khilafah continued after the death of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. But those who followed him were no longer Khalifatullah, but now they were Khalifatul Rasul. And so we had Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Umar Farooq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Uthman Ghani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and so many others. The argument has been raised by some that the Khilafah ended a long, long time ago. And what succeeded the Khilafah was monarchy or Mulukiya. That argument is invalid. No. What happened was that the seat of the Khilafah, the kursi, that was corrupted. And so the Khalifa was now more of a king than Khalifa. But with this important difference, that the political system, the state and the government still recognize Allah as sovereign, still recognize Allah's authority as supreme, still recognize Allah's law as the highest law. And so the institution of the Khilafah lasted with us until the modern age, even though the kursi had become monarchy or mulukiya. But then something strange happened. A wall constructed by Zulqarnain of iron and steel, and after he constructed that wall, he said, هذا رحمة من ربي. This wall, this barrier, is rahmah from my Rabb. فإذا جاء وعد ربي جعله دكا. But when that time comes of which my Lord has warned, Allah is going to bring down this barrier. وَكَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّ حَقًّا. And then the warning of my Rabb will be fulfilled. When that barrier comes down, then Ya'juj and Ma'juj are going to be released. Who are they? Human beings. Human beings. But in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ gave to us Hadith al-Qudsi, the direct speech of Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have created creatures of mine so powerful that none but I can destroy them. And so when Ya'juj and Ma'juj are released, the world will face a power which is indestructible. And so the Quran now tells us in Surah Al-Anbiya, which we quoted last night, that when Ya'juj and Ma'juj are released, إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. They will descend from every height with their indestructible power. And so they'll take control of the world. When that time comes, then وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. A town, a city destroyed by Allah, and the people expelled out. And now there's a ban placed on them. They can never return to reclaim this town or city, never. Hatta, until that time comes when the barrier is taken down by Allah. Ya'juj and Ma'juj are released, and they take control of the world with their indestructible power. Then you will see the people of that town returning to the town and reclaiming the town. 2,000 years after they were expelled. Who are these people? We argued last night. We don't have the time to repeat the argument. This is Jerusalem. And so the Quran now explains. Number one, the return of the Jews to the Holy Land. Nobody else can explain it. No university can explain it. No government can explain it. The Quran is explaining it. The return of the Jews to the Holy Land after 2,000 years. And the restoration of the state of Israel. In order for this to be achieved, certain obstacles had to be removed. You cannot bring the Jews back to the Holy Land and restore the state of Israel so long as there is a Khilafah. The Khalifa gives the call for jihad, and the hearts of the believers around the world will be mobilized, and the Muslim army will march from Singapore. Yeah? Yes. Khalifa gives the order, and the Muslims of Singapore take their orders from whom? From the Khalifa. And the Muslim army marches. A Muslim army marches from Indonesia. Yeah? So you could not restore the state of Israel. You could not bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim Jerusalem so long as there was a Khalifa. Khilafah had to be destroyed. How would you destroy the Khilafah? The answer is, you have to attack the foundations of the state. The Khilafah continued until 1924. This is Brother Luqman Landi from Australia, who now is in Indonesia doing da'wah. And I spent 2 weeks with him in Indonesia, mashallah, and I enjoyed it. But he worked me very hard. 1 day, 5 lectures. And because of him, I've decided I'm going to go to Indonesia to live for 1 year, inshallah. From next year, inshallah. And I'll introduce him to you at the end of the lecture. And he needs support because he has about 100 schools, this one man, with 300 teachers teaching in the kampungs of Indonesia. And he goes to Australia and he raises money from donations to pay his staff. I went and I visited these schools. So he's here and he needs support, and I want to introduce him to Singapore. 1924. It was in Istanbul, the Ottoman Islamic Empire. How to destroy the Khilafah? What they did, the civilization of Ya'juj and Ma'juj. What they did was to first attack Europe. Europe used to be Christian. And then suddenly and mysteriously, Europe discards Christianity, and Europe becomes an essentially secular and a Catholic civilization. And a new concept of the state emerges in Europe. When Europe was Christian, then Europe recognized the divine rights of kings, that sovereignty rested up there in the heavens. And that sovereignty of the heavens was dedicated to the church, the Pope. And for you to be a king, the Pope has to crown you as king. Only then you're a king. And the king had to enforce the laws given by the church. But then when the revolution took place in Europe, the turning point was the French Revolution. And there emerged a man named Napoleon. And when the time came for Napoleon to be crowned as emperor, he didn't bother about the Pope. He took the crown and he put it on his own head. He put it on his own head. Meaning, this is a new Europe now. This is a secular Europe. This Europe now has a new concept of the state. The state is now sovereign. Allah is no longer recognized as sovereign. Supreme authority now resides in the state. Allah's authority is no longer recognized as supreme. The supreme law is the law of the state. Allah's law is no longer recognized as the supreme law. Allah can make something haram, we can make it halal. We can legalize it. This is the new Europe. It is from the top to the bottom, built on shirk. You have to be blind not to see the shirk. Blind not to see the shirk. When Europe embraced this new model of the state built on shirk, this new Europe now sent its spies. Last night we had just asked. Spies infiltrated Istanbul. Spies infiltrated the Ottoman Islamic army and brainwashed some of the officers. And these officers were now secularized. And they became known as the Young Turks. And they began to attack the Ottoman Khilafah from inside. At the head of that was Mustafa Kemal. Mustafa Kemal. In order to be able to destroy the Khilafah, they not only had to attack the Ottoman Khilafah in Istanbul through the Young Turks, they had to do something else. It was a multi-pronged attack. In order for a Khalifa to be Khalifa, he must control the Hajj. He must control Mecca. Can you imagine? What's his name, the fellow in Afghanistan? Mullah Omar? The head of the Taliban. Suppose Mullah Omar declares, I am the Khalifa now. And the people of Afghanistan give the bay'ah to Mullah Omar. And then Muslims in Pakistan say, okay, we also give bay'ah. Some Muslims in Brooklyn say, okay, we're going to also give bay'ah. He is the Khalifa now. Khilafah is restored. Okay, alright. Then Mullah Omar wants to go perform the Hajj. He has to apply for Saudi visa. Imagine that. You are Khalifa, and you have to apply for Saudi visa to perform the Hajj. That is not Khilafah, that's a joke. That's a joke, that's not Khilafah. And yet there are some serious scholars of Islam who are saying, yes, he should declare himself Khalifa, and we should all give the bay'ah to him. So in order for the Khalifa to be Khalifa, among other things, he must control the Hajj. He must control the Hijaz. And so the British decided to attack the Hijaz in order to rob the Khalifa of his control over the Hijaz. And the British used Jassas, the spy. Amongst them, the most infamous was a man named Lawrence of Arabia. Jassas, you remember the hadith from last night? Good. Lawrence of Arabia learned the Arabic language, dressed as an Arab, infiltrated into Arabia, went to Abdulaziz ibn Saud, and went to Sharif al-Hussein. Sharif al-Hussein was the Sharif of Mecca, appointed by the Khalifa, the great-great-grandfather of the present king of Jordan. And when he went to Sharif al-Hussein, he made promises. He said, if you would rebel against the Khalifa, we would make you the king of the Arabs. And if you would rebel against the Khalifa, here's my checkbook, £7 million sterling. And guess what the Sharif did? Yes, he accepted the £7 million sterling. He accepted the offer, the promise that he would be the king of the Arabs. And then he rebelled against the Khalifa. And the Khalifa lost control of the Hijaz, of Mecca. Something strange, that the Ottoman Khalifa used a Turkish garrison, Turkish troops, to defend Medina. Medina was defended by Turkish troops. And Jerusalem was also defended by Turkish troops. But Mecca was entirely defended by Arab troops. So there were no Turks there. And so Sharif al-Hussein was able very easily to rebel against the Khalifa. And so Mecca is lost. Khalifa has lost the control over the Hajj. Medina is still under the control of the Khalifa, and Jerusalem is still under the control of the Khalifa. But once Mecca was lost and the Hajj was lost, Now the Khalifa, in the eyes of the world of Islam, is losing his legitimacy. And then the British and the French and the Germans and so on, they launched the First World War. The Khalifa did not want to enter into the First World War. But through internal conspiracy involving the Young Turks, the Ottoman Empire was pushed into the war on the side of Germany. So now the British army has an excuse to attack. The French army has an excuse to attack. The Italian army has an excuse to attack. And the Ottoman Islamic Empire lose all their territories in Europe. All. And now the attack is in the Arab world. But the most ominous attack of all was the army led by the General Allenby, the British general. And that army is heading for Jerusalem. And it is 1919. And there are Arab troops fighting in that army under the British general. And there are Indian Muslims from the Punjab fighting in that army under the British general. And in 1919 they defeat the Turkish army. And Jerusalem is conquered. With the loss of Jerusalem and the loss of Mecca, and then subsequently the loss of Medina, the Ottoman Khalifa is demoralized. The Greek army now crosses the Bosphorus and attacks Turkey itself, the Turkish homeland. And the Greek army threatens to take control and colonize the Turkish homeland, where the Turkish language is spoken. And so it appeared as though everything was lost. Not only has the Ottoman Empire lost its European possessions, not only has it lost its possessions in the Arabic-speaking world, but now it is also losing the Turkish homeland. It was at this time that something very strange happened. Very strange. If you'll allow me to express it this way, the British allowed Mustafa Kemal to defeat them at a place called Gallipoli. And when the British army was defeated at Gallipoli, that news was like electricity running through the veins of the whole Turkish people. Now there is hope, where formerly there was only darkness. Even though Mustafa Kemal drinks whiskey, even though Mustafa Kemal doesn't perform salat, he doesn't know Islam, he doesn't live Islam. Yesterday, such a man, we would have thrown him in the garbage bin. But now, today, since he has defeated the British, now there's a ray of hope that the Turkish homeland can be saved. So now you embrace a man who doesn't know Islam, who doesn't live Islam. See how Dajjal is very cunning? The Khalifa is forced to appoint Mustafa Kemal as supreme commander of all the Turkish forces fighting the Greeks. And then Mustafa Kemal wins victory after victory until he throws the Greek army out. And now he becomes such a hero that the Turkish people worship him. They worship him. 70 years have passed, they still worship him. This is psychological warfare at its very best. They did the same thing in Egypt with Gamal Abdel Nasser. They did the same thing in Indonesia with Ahmad Sukarno. They did the same thing in so many countries to brainwash the people, to accept leaders who didn't know Islam and who didn't live Islam and who now became national heroes. The Khalifa is now a prisoner, so to say, of Mustafa Kemal. He's in charge. he wants to establish in Turkey now the European model of a state, the Republic of Turkey. That is his goal. The Khilafah can no longer survive. It must be replaced by the European model of a secular state. But Mustafa Kemal said, wait a minute. Don't the Europeans have a pope? If they have a pope, well, we can have a Khalifa. And our Khalifa will be like the pope. Because Mustafa Kemal knew how much the Turkish people in their hearts, they were attached to the Khilafah. So in 1922, what he did was declare that the Khalifa is now removed of all his secular power, and the Khalifa is the equivalent of a pope. He only has religious authority. And from 1922 to 1924 this continued. But then in 1924 he abolished the Khilafah. Abolished it completely. The question I have to ask you tonight is, why did he do it? The answer is located in India. In India. The British had occupied India. And the Indian Islamic state, the Mughal empire, had been destroyed. But the Indian Muslims longed to get rid of the British. And the Indian Muslims had a leadership of men who knew Islam and who lived Islam. Those men, they spotted an opportunity when they saw the Khilafah under attack by Mustafa Kemal. So what these men did was to establish a movement. They called it the Khilafat movement in India. And they used this to try to mobilize the people, because the Indian Muslims had great love for the Khilafah. But their ultimate objective was to get rid of the British and bring back Islam to India. That was their objective. When they established the Khilafat movement, men like Muhammad Ali Jawhar, Maulana Muhammad Ali Jawhar, Maulana Shawkat Ali, Sayyid Sulaiman Nadwi, Mufti Kifayatullah, Shu'aib Quraishi, when they established the Khilafat movement, then the Hindu leadership of India was also in the hands of a man who knew Hinduism and lived Hinduism. Not a secular Hindu like Jawaharlal Nehru. No. This was a man who knew Hinduism and lived Hinduism. His name was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. So Gandhi said, here is an opportunity. The Muslims want to throw the British out, and when the British are thrown out, they want to live as Muslims. And we, the Hindus, we want the same thing. We want to throw the British out, and when we throw the British out, we want to live as Hindus. So both of us want the same thing. So let us support the Khilafat movement. And so Gandhi came and he joined the Khilafat. And it became a Hindu-Muslim struggle now for the Khilafat. This was the most dangerous attack ever on European colonialism. The most dangerous attack that Britain had ever faced in the universal acceptance of the secular state. If this attack was not removed, then this Hindu-Muslim alliance had the capacity within it to succeed in giving the British what is known as a bloody nose. Because Britain could not put so many troops in India to be able to control an entire India that was prepared to fight to the last man. What is Britain to do to destroy this Khilafat movement? The answer is
Britain now instructs Mustafa Kemal, abolish the Khilafah. And so in 1924, Mustafa Kemal abolished the Khilafah. And as soon as the Khilafah was abolished, guess what happened in India? It pulled the rug from under the feet of the Khilafah movement. They have nothing to struggle for now. Khilafah is gone. In the same year that the Caliphate was abolished, 1924, in the same year that the Khilafah movement in India is now struck with a mortal blow, in that same year, another Muslim organization is revived. And that Muslim organization is essentially secular in its thinking, like the Young Turks. And that Muslim organization eventually took over from the Caliphate movement. And they became the leader of the Muslims of India. And who were they? They were men who did not know Islam and who did not live Islam. Men like Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Whatever you want to say good about the man, you can go ahead and say it, but you cannot deny it. Jinnah didn't know Islam, can't deny that. Jinnah didn't live Islam, you can't deny that. Liaquat Ali Khan didn't know Islam, didn't live Islam. These are the new leaders of the Indian Muslims. And so now, the Hindu-Muslim alliance that had taken place now falls apart. And the British can now relax. Eventually the British succeed in a magnificent success. And this is brilliant, brilliant. They get Muslims to declare success. We have achieved Pakistan. But in Pakistan, they don't even know they're Muslims and they can't live as Muslims. And they get the Hindus to declare success. We've won India. But in India, they can't live as Hindus. So Hinduism is delivered a fatal blow with the emergence of the secular state of India. And Islam is delivered a fatal blow with the emergence of the secular state of Pakistan. Now that is success. That is success. When the Khilafah was abolished, on the 3rd of March 1924, then something happened in Arabia. Remember, the British had gone to Sharif al-Hussein with how much? 7 million pounds? 7 million pounds. But the British also went to Abdulaziz ibn Saud. He was in Riyadh, and he was the head of a Saudi Wahhabi alliance. And they offered him how much? 5,000 pounds a month. And what did he do? He accepted it. And when he accepted it, then he signed a treaty with Britain. I am friends with you now against the Ottoman Islamic Empire. So this one betrayed Islam and that one betrayed Islam. But Abdulaziz ibn Saud and Sharif Hussein were enemies to each other because of this Wahhabi connection. Sharif al-Hussein, acting on instructions from the Khalifa in Istanbul, prohibited the Wahhabis from performing the Hajj. And so now that the Khilafah was abolished on the 3rd of March 24, Sharif al-Hussein immediately acted very quickly. Very quickly he proclaimed himself to be Khalifa on the 7th of March 24. He did this essentially to protect himself. From whom? Abdulaziz ibn Saud. When he proclaimed himself Khalifa, then many of the ulama in that region accepted him as the Khalifa. After all, number one, he has control of the Hijaz and the Hajj. Number two, he says that he is a descendant of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He's Hashimi. And number three, he is supported by Britain, the superpower. But as soon as Sharif al-Hussein declared himself Khalifa, that was his fatal mistake. If you are a client state of Britain, then client states don't have the freedom to do these things. You have to ask His Majesty's government, may I be allowed to proclaim myself to be the Khalifa? And if His Majesty's government said yes, then you can do it, because you're a client state. The British did not only want to get rid of the Ottoman Khilafah, so that the state of Israel can be restored. The British wanted to get rid of the institution of Khilafah altogether, so that the whole world of Islam can be imprisoned in the new secular state. And all the Muslims will become part of the shirk. That is the British objective. So Khilafah has to go. So once Sharif al-Hussein claimed the Khilafah, then they gave the green light to Abdulaziz ibn Saud. Go ahead, attack him. See, the British are very smart. They don't put all their eggs in one basket. Sharif al-Hussein is now attacked by Abdulaziz ibn Saud, and by, I think, the month of October, Abdulaziz ibn Saud conquers Makkah. When the Saudi Wahhabi troops entered into Makkah in October 24, Abdulaziz ibn Saud made a declaration to the world of Islam, and the Saudis hate me for reminding the people of this. Abdulaziz ibn Saud declared, this land belongs to the world of Islam, not to me. Secondly, the government to rule over this land must be appointed by the world of Islam, not by me. Huh? Strange to hear that now. He did that because he was afraid that the Muslims would do to him what they did to the Wahhabis about 150 years earlier. When the Wahhabis came out of the desert and they conquered Makkah, they slaughtered everybody. So they're all mushrikeen, wajibul qatl. And then the Ottoman Empire sent an army and the Wahhabis were thrown out into the desert. So he didn't want this to happen again. This is why he made this declaration. But before this, in April 1924, just after the Khilafah was destroyed, was abolished, Al-Azhar University responded. All the ulama of Egypt and of Al-Azhar came together, and a declaration was issued in the name of Sheikh Al-Azhar, declaring that this was bid'ah to abolish the Khilafah, declaring that the Khilafah is a part of the religion of Islam, using a hadith. For example, the hadith in Sahih Muslim, whosoever dies without the obligation of bay'ah being imposed upon him, such a person dies the death of jahiliyyah. Man mata walam yara fi unuqihi bay'ah faqad mata maytatan jahiliyyah. Al-Azhar University proposed that an Islamic conference be held in Cairo in order to respond to what Mustafa Kemal had done. Problem is, Egypt was under British control. The king of Egypt could only say what the British allow him to say. So this is a joke, that you could have a conference in a land under British control to appoint a new Khalifa. This is a joke. Even so, the proposal created so many problems that the conference could not take place until 2 years later. When the conference took place in the month of May 1926, the conference decided very quickly, number one, the Khilafah is a part of Islam. Number two, the Khilafah should be restored. Number three, we cannot restore it. What should we do? We don't know. Let's go back home and think about it. That was the conclusion of the conference. Let's go back home and let's think about it. And we come back next year. The Saudi delegation was there in the conference. And the Saudi delegation also agreed that the Khilafah is a part of Islam, it should be restored. But Abdulaziz ibn Saud had some other plans. He organized a second conference. 1 month after this conference, that one took place in Mecca. And in that conference, all the great powers assisted him. This one in Cairo, Britain opposed it. France opposed it. Russia opposed it. China opposed it. And so this conference ended up, as he said, an Arab conference. But that one in Mecca, Britain supported it. France supported it. Russia supported it. China supported it. And so the conference in Mecca attracted a representative gathering of Muslims. The one in Cairo, the Indian Muslims did not send a delegation to Cairo. But the one in Mecca, powerful Indian delegation came to Mecca, headed by Maulana Muhammad Ali Jawhar himself. But when the delegations came to Mecca, they found a surprise. Abdulaziz, in this conference in Mecca, the head of the Saudi Wahhabi state, who declared they have the pure Islam, and the rest of us don't have any pure Islam. The Wahhabi Islam is the pure Islam. Okay, all right. If the Wahhabi Islam is the pure Islam, then surely this most representative gathering of the world of Islam, taking place 2 years after the Khilafah has been abolished, surely number one item on the agenda would be to respond to this. But the Wahhabis had betrayed Islam. Anyone who wants to challenge me over that is free to challenge me anytime over this statement. The Wahhabis had betrayed Islam. The betrayal was very plain in the agenda. Nothing in the agenda was connected with the institution of the Khilafah. The Khilafah was taken out of the agenda of this conference. This is betrayal. Instead, what the Saudi Wahhabi leadership wanted from this conference was that the world of Islam would accept their rule to be legitimate. So the king went to the conference on 2 occasions, I believe, and the king himself addressed the conference. And he asked the conference to do that, to recognize the Saudi Wahhabi rule over the Hijaz. Even though 2 years earlier he had said this land belongs to the world of Islam, and the world of Islam was established the government. When the king was finished, the head of the Indian delegation, he responded first. And he was a man of such stature that once he had spoken, nobody else could differ with him. And what he said to the king was, no, we refuse to do this. What you're doing is wrong. In those days we had Muslim leaders who were made of iron and steel. Today we have a lot of recycled paper. Maybe tomorrow, some of our children, tomorrow, may emerge as men of iron and steel, inshallah. Maulana Muhammad Ali Jawhar said, no, we will not do it. And so the conference ended. The Saudis were very angry, very angry. After that, the whole world of Islam now is embraced by the secular model of the state. First it was Turkey, the Republic of Turkey. Then it was Iran, the Republic of Iran. And then it was Saudi Arabia, also a secular state. The secularism is enshrined, for example, in the rights Once a territory is Darul Islam, then every Muslim has the right to enter that territory. You don't need a visa. You need a visa to go to Saudi Arabia? Sure you do. You go now to Jeddah Airport and say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, see that will get you in. Huh? Will it get you in? That's a secular state. That is a secular state. If with Darul Islam, then every Muslim has the right to enter. If it is Darul Islam, every Muslim has the right to reside. You don't need any residence permit. PR, permanent residence. If it is Darul Islam, you don't need any work permit to work. No. And if it is Darul Islam, you participate in the political process of political equality with all other Muslims. But now Saudi Arabia is a secular state, like every European state, with the flag, with the national anthem, blah, 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 blah. And then Pakistan emerges eventually, and Pakistan, as I told you earlier, a secular state, like India, a secular state. And so the whole world of Islam is imprisoned in this prison of shirk. And then it becomes possible for the Jews to return to the Holy Land and for the state of Israel to be restored. If you had Islam, this would never have happened. You had to lose Islam for this to happen. When you lost Islam, then this was possible. The Prophet said, the time will come. He said, the time will come when nothing will remain of Islam except the name. I hope nobody is annoyed with me for quoting Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. يوشك أن يأتي على الناس زمن لا يبقى من الإسلام إلا اسمه. But nothing will remain of Islam except the name. ولا يبقى من القرآن إلا رسمه. And when nothing will remain of the Quran. Nothing will remain of the Quran except the words which are mechanically recited. You follow the traces of the words. That's it. People recite beautifully. Beautifully. But it doesn't go beyond the truth, said Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So don't be fooled. مساجدهم عامرة وهي خراب من الهدى. When that time comes, the masajid will be multi-million dollar projects, iron and steel, but totally devoid of guidance. Where are the scholars of Islam who, when they see something wrong, would say it is wrong, regardless of the price they have to pay? Where are they? Once upon a time we had them, and then a time came when we lost them. May Allah grant that Ustaz Harun grows to be such a man. علماؤهم شر الناس ممن تحت أديم السماء. And when that age comes when nothing remains of Islam, it is the ulama who are to blame. The religious scholars of Islam, these are the ones who will be, the big betrayal will take place for them. And they will then be considered by Allah to be the worst people beneath the sky. And so therefore this is how the world of Islam responded to the destruction of the Khilafah, and this is what replaced the Khilafah, the modern secular state. In consequence of this, it now became possible for the Jews to be brought back to the Holy Land and for the state of Israel to be restored. But Ya'juj and Ma'juj were not the only actors involved in this. It's also Dajjal, we mentioned last night. When Allah made the promise that He would send the Messiah to Banu Israel, the Messiah would bring back the golden age, Zaman Nasr. The Messiah will rule the world from Jerusalem. But the Babylonian army has occupied the Holy Land. So in order for the Messiah to fulfill that promise, number one, he'll have to liberate the Holy Land. Number two, he'll have to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land. Number three, he'll have to restore the state of Israel. And number four, Israel will have to become the ruling state of the world like the Israel of Sulaiman alayhi salam. And then the Messiah will rule the world from Jerusalem. But when they boasted of how to kill him, Isa alayhi salam, then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ informed us that Allah was going to send someone who would impersonate the Messiah and deceive them. And so this fellow has a PhD in deception. Who is he? Dajjal, Al-Masih al-Dajjal. Dajjal, the false Messiah. He sees with one eye. The other eye is blind. This is our subject for tomorrow night. He sees with one eye, the other eye is blind. He has only external observation. He is internally, spiritually blind. When Dajjal is released, in order for him to impersonate the Messiah, number one, he'll have to liberate the Holy Land. This happened in 1919. Number two, he'll have to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land. This continued until 1948. Number three, he'll have to restore the state of Israel. This happened in 1948. So only one thing left now. What is it? Israel has to become the ruling state in the world. When my book is published on this subject, you will see me arguing. That is likely to take place within the next 5 to 10 years. Israel will replace the United States of America as the ruling state in the world. Does the foreign ministry know that? No, they don't know that. The diplomats don't know that. The ministers don't know that. We who have the Quran and Muhammad and Islam, we know it. They don't know it. When Dajjal is released, the Prophet said, Dajjal will try to get mankind to worship him as Allah. Meaning, what this means is, Dajjal will try to get mankind to enter into shirk. This is the shirk. Around the world today, the modern secular state is founded on shirk. Those who pledge their allegiance to the secular state now become part of the shirk. Those who vote in elections, when you vote in elections, what are you voting for? For government. A government which will do what? Which will rule over you. Who are the people you vote for? People who have made halal what Allah made haram. To make halal what Allah made haram, is that shirk? Yes. Which surah? Surah At-Tawbah. And you're going to memorize the ayah. You're going to memorize the ayah. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ابن مريم وما أمروا إلا أن يعبدوا إلها واحد لا إله إلا هو سبحانه عما يشركون. Allah condemned the Jews and the Christians. Some people must be annoyed with him for that. Annoyed with Allah. You shouldn't say these things. Yes. What kind of world we live in today? They want to rewrite the Quran now. Take out all these ayat of the Quran. They took their priests and their rabbis as lords and gods besides Allah. Allah is angry with them. And Allah described this as an act of shirk. So a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, how could Allah say so? Christians don't worship their priests, the Jews don't worship their rabbis. The Prophet replied and he said, did they not make halal what Allah made haram? That is their shirk. Did the people not follow them in it? That is their shirk. Example? Example? Allah made riba haram. Don't worry, I'm not going to stay too long on it. Allah made riba haram. And they changed the Torah to make it halal. My book, The Religion of Abraham and the State of Israel, a view from the Quran, describes all these changes, but unfortunately they're all sold out. We don't have any copies for you today.